I never thought honoring a veteran could land me in trouble with the HOA, but here we are. It all started on a sunny Saturday morning when my family and I organized a small gathering at our home. Nothing wild, just neighbors, close friends, and a few former military buddies who came together to pay tribute to my late grandfather, a decorated war veteran. We set up a few chairs in the yard, had flags flying, and played the national anthem on a small speaker. But the peaceful tribute didn't sit well with one person, Karen. Now, Karen isn't just any neighbor. She's the self-appointed watchdog of our neighborhood, always walking around with a clipboard like she owns the block. And sure enough, just as people were arriving and we were preparing for the opening speech, she stormed in with her usual attitude, waving a piece of paper and claiming we were violating HOA rules. Her complaint: too many guests, she snapped, without even bothering to ask what the gathering was about. No conversation, no courtesy, just a fine slapped right on our door the next day. You can imagine how shocked and hurt we all felt. This wasn't some loud party or disruptive event. It was a heartfelt honor ceremony for someone who gave his life in service. But Karen didn't see that, or maybe she didn't care. The worst part: she tried to shut it down halfway through the event. That's when things started to take a turn. One of the guests, a retired Marine, stepped forward. And let's just say what happened next caught everyone off guard, including Karen. You won't believe how it unfolded or how the community responded once they found out the truth. Stick around, because the way this story ends, well, let's just say Karen didn't see it coming. To understand how we got here, you have to know a bit about Karen. She moved into the neighborhood about a year ago. And ever since, it's been like walking on eggshells around her. She's filed noise complaints about kids playing, told people to repaint their fences, even reported someone for having their Halloween lights up past November. So when she saw cars parked up and down our street, she didn't bother to ask questions. She went straight into enforcement mode. But what she didn't realize was this event wasn't some random get-together. It had been in the works for months. My grandfather served in 2 wars and had earned a Silver Star when he passed away. We didn't get to hold a proper ceremony at the time due to travel restrictions. So this gathering, right in our own front yard, was something deeply meaningful, not just to our family, but to the veterans in our neighborhood who knew him. We had guests coming in from out of town. People wore uniforms, shared stories, and brought medals and pictures from back in the day. It wasn't just emotional, it was powerful. And then in walks Karen, phone in hand, snapping pictures of license plates, taking notes like she was building a case. She didn't even ask what the event was for before threatening to call the police and demanding we disperse the group immediately. I tried to stay calm, told her it was a private memorial event, but she wouldn't hear it. She just kept saying, "You're violating HOA guest limits. This many cars isn't allowed." The guests grew quiet. Tension built in the air. And that's when one of the older men stood up, slowly, with medals pinned proudly to his chest. Karen looked confused. He cleared his throat and, let's just say, what he said next completely shifted the energy. But it didn't stop her. Not yet. The man who stood up was Mr. Jenkins, a quiet neighbor who lived 3 houses down. Most people didn't know much about him, just that he was retired and kept to himself. But that day, dressed in full uniform, with service ribbons neatly displayed, he looked every bit the hero. He slowly walked over to Karen. Not aggressive, just calm and firm. "Ma'am," he said, "do you understand what this gathering is about? You're trying to shut down a memorial for a fellow veteran who gave more to this country than you'll ever know." Karen blinked, clearly caught off guard, but she didn't back down. "I don't care what this is," she said. "There are too many people here. The HOA rules clearly state no more than 8 guests per household unless pre-approved. That includes cars, noise, and lawn setups. You didn't get permission, so this is a violation. That hit like a slap in the face. People started murmuring among themselves. Some guests were getting visibly upset. Others quietly packed away decorations, thinking the event might get shut down before it even began. Meanwhile, I was trying to manage it all, keep the peace, respect our guests, and somehow keep this memorial going. The fine she left on our door earlier was just the start. Karen was now demanding that everyone leave immediately, threatening to report us to the HOA board and even local authorities. Behind the scenes, my cousin Sarah, a lawyer, started making calls. She wasn't about to let our grandfather's name be disrespected. Meanwhile, some neighbors who hadn't been invited but saw the commotion started gathering on their lawns. A few even came over, asking what was going on. The mood shifted. It wasn't just about a guest limit anymore. It was about respect, about community, and about standing up to the kind of entitled behavior that forgets what really matters. But Karen wasn't finished. It's not even close. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Karen stood there, arms crossed, tapping her foot like she was waiting for someone to back down. But no one did. More neighbors had started to drift over, curious about the scene unfolding in the yard. Some whispered among themselves. Others pulled out their phones whether to record what was happening or check the HOA rules. I wasn't sure. What I did know was that things were about to reach a breaking point. Mr. Jenkins didn't sit back down. Instead, he stood his ground and stared Karen in the eye. "You've made your point," he said. "But this ceremony is going to continue, whether you like it or not." His voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the steel in his tone. Karen turned red. She started pacing, pulling up the HOA bylaws on her phone and muttering about consequences. Then she began taking photos of everyone again, faces, flags, even the framed portrait of my grandfather by the podium. That's when Sarah walked up with her phone to her ear. "I just spoke with someone from the county," she said, loud enough for Karen to hear, and also got clarification from the HOA chairperson. Turns out memorial events fall under a separate category, not subject to the standard guest limit. Karen's face dropped slightly, but she quickly recovered and claimed she was going to file a formal complaint anyway. But before she could take another step, we all heard the unmistakable sound of sirens. Oh, 2 patrol cars rolled up slowly, lights flashing, but no urgency. Karen smiled like she had one. Finally, she said under her breath. Everyone froze. I felt my stomach twist. Had she really called the cops on a memorial ceremony? The officers stepped out, scanning the crowd. And then something unexpected happens, something that made Karen's smug expression fade in an instant. Everyone was waiting. No one spoke. The next moment would decide everything. The officers stepped out of the patrol car, and the air went completely still. One of them, Officer Ramirez, was familiar to a few of us. He'd patrolled the neighborhood before. Always respectful and level-headed. But this time, his expression was unreadable as he walked toward the yard, slowly scanning the scene. Karen practically sprinted over to him, waving her phone in the air. "Officer, thank goodness. This gathering is way over the HOA guest limit, and they refuse to break it up. I want this shut down immediately." Officer Ramirez didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked past her and locked eyes with Mr. Jenkins, who gave him a slow nod. Then the second officer stepped forward, and that's when the real twist hit. He wasn't just another copy, was a decorated veteran too. And not just that, he served with my grandfather. As soon as he saw the portrait near the podium, his entire expression changed. He removed his hat, stepped toward the front, and quietly asked, "Is this for Sergeant McMillan?" The silence broke into murmurs. Assheads turned. I nodded. "Yes, sir. We're honoring him today." Karen's face froze, her mouth still half open from her last complaint. The officer straightened up, cleared his throat, and said, "Then I'll be staying. He saved my life once. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be standing here. The crowd, which had already begun to lean toward sympathy, suddenly shifted into something deeper solidarity. But Karen wasn't done. Not yet. With a shaky voice, she doubled down. That doesn't change the fact that they're in violation of the HOA policy. I demand that you enforce the rules. Officer Ramirez raised an eyebrow. We're not here for HOA enforcement. We're here because someone reported a disturbance. He looked around. I don't see one. Karen's composure cracked for a moment, but just when it seemed like things might settle, she pulled out one final move. A letter. Not from the HOA, but a private lawyer. Apparently, she had been planning something bigger than anyone expected. Karen held up the letter like it was her trump card. This is a cease and desist, she announced loudly, waving it toward me. It's from my lawyer. I warned the HOA weeks ago that gatherings like this disrupt the peace and lower property values. If you don't shut this down right now, I'll sue for damages. Her voice trembled not from fear, but from the desperate need to control the moment. I stepped forward, heart pounding, but voice steady. You knew about this before. Today? I asked. You waited until the ceremony began to try and ruin it. She didn't answer, but the silence spoke for her. Officer Ramirez gently took the letter, gave it a quick glance, then handed it right back. This isn't enforceable, he said plainly. You can take it up with your lawyer, but right now, you're interfering with a lawful and respectful event. Just then, another voice cut through the crowd. It was Mrs. Henderson, the president of the HOA, who had quietly arrived during all the commotion. Karen, she said sharply, you never brought this to the board. You acted on your own. And you don't have the authority to speak for us. Karen's face went pale. People were watching from windows, from sidewalks, even recording on their phones. Mrs. Henderson stepped up beside me. This ceremony is not a violation, and if anything, we owe this family an apology for the harassment. Karen didn't speak. She simply turned, red-faced and silent, and stormed off without another word. We thought that was the end until later that evening, a neighbor forwarded an email. Karen had tried to organize a petition to remove me from the HOA entirely. But what shocked everyone was the email thread revealed something bigger. Karen had previously been warned by her former HOA in another state for similar behavior. The community rallied after that, not just in support of the ceremony, but in holding Karen accountable. What began as a fight over too many guests became a moment that united the neighborhood for the right reasons. After everything that happened, the ceremony carried on with even more meaning. Neighbors who hadn't planned to attend brought flowers, chairs, and warm words. The officers stayed through the entire service. And the veteran who served with my grandfather gave a heartfelt speech that left many in tears. What started with confrontation turned into connection. People who barely spoke before were now sharing stories, shaking hands, and truly listening to one another. Even Mr. Jenkins, who had been quiet for so long, said it was the first time he felt proud to be part of the neighborhood. As for Karen, the truth about her history with past HOAs spread quickly, and the board officially reviewed her actions. They found she had overstepped more than once, making false claims and misusing HOA guidelines for personal control. She was formally warned, and eventually she stopped attending meetings altogether. Without her constant interference, the community began to feel more relaxed, more united. Sarah, my cousin, followed up with a letter of her own, this time thanking the board for supporting the right to honor veterans and reminding everyone that rules should never be used as weapons against kindness. The cease and desist, completely ignored. In the end, that day became more than a memorial. It became a turning point for all of us, a reminder that respect, especially for those who served, is bigger than any petty rule. It showed how quickly entitled people can create chaos. but also how powerfully a community can push back with grace and solidarity. So, if you ever face someone like Karen who hides behind policies to control or divide, stand firm, especially when you're standing up for something that truly matters. Because sometimes it takes one tough moment to bring out the best in everyone.